So, what is your point about England and Netherlands?
Yeah, it's another interesting series from a couple of perspectives. So on the one hand, you had England's batting dominance in that first ODI, where they made 498. That was quite the ridiculous showcase of just hitting. And in general, that's how England played all series. The total cricket, the New England form of batting, just taken to the extreme. And I think it is to Netherlands' credit that they didn't completely collapse. They never once really looked like winning, but none of those games were on the top 10 worst defeats in ODI history. Netherlands, never looked that bad. They just looked like a team that was completely outmatched by the best team in the world, which is to their credit and shows that the depth in ODI cricket probably is a lot better than a lot of the people in charge give it credit for. But
Uh,
I think, okay, you can talk about this first.
Actually, I wanted to talk about one thing, especially since someone like Scott Edward did really well in the series. I think all the external drama here, especially with, I mean, you can can't really call it drama, but all the chat about the 500 in Morgan situation, Peter Seelar situation. I think a lot of Dutch players, who did well, kind of, got moved to the sidelines. I think, Scott Edwards did well. There were some good innings here and there. Even during the West Indies series, Vikramjit Singh did really well. Obviously, Base Delete is kind of a good player. He showed his potential in the third ODI. But I kind of got a feeling that all this outside chat you know, uh, kind of engulfed all that positives that happened for Dutch cricket, and that is not kind of a good thing, especially since they are trying to they are trying to improve as a team, and that is ultimately the aim. So I think there could have been a better, I'm not saying that they had done anything wrong, but probably a better representation of it all, to say the least.
Yeah, I can see that, but at the end of the day, this was Netherlands lost 3-0. It's hard to talk about the Netherlands too much when they lost the series 3-0.
Uh,
But uh, yeah, there's just a lot more to talk about from England's side than the Dutch side. Yeah, that's not to discount that there was stuff to talk about on the Dutch side. This probably has been overlooked. But I
yeah,
think I think one of the most important things from this series is just sort of the nature of what ODI cricket has sort of become right now. Not in the sense of like not like what your dad was talking about in the 434 game, 438 game about the high scores ruining the sport, but just from the Dutch side, how did this series go? Was that they couldn't call up some of their best players because they were playing in England, and ultimately these these are some of the Netherlands' most important games in their history. Well, okay, that's not true. They would have been the most important games in the Netherlands' history if the
true.
Super League was going to continue into the next cycle, but it's not. So that means no matter what happens in these games, the Netherlands is not going to get 24 ODIs in the next 4-year cycle against top quality opposition. They're going to either be left to schedule all their ODIs themselves, or they'll be forced to relegate into League Two without any prospect of coming back up. So, ever since the announcement came through that the Super League won't continue next cycle, the Netherlands have basically treated the Super League as an A series tours. They've never been able to pick their best players, and they haven't really tried all that much because what's the point? These matches don't matter to them anymore because they're going to finish last, or maybe not last, but they're going to finish outside the top 8 no matter what. So they might as well just play whoever they can. And the fact that they didn't get blown out by England, they didn't get blown out completely by England. They get blown out by the West Indies, and they pushed the West Indies very close several times, despite not being able to play some of their best players, the ones mainly the ones based in England and New Zealand. It speaks quite well to the talent they have in their team. But yeah, it's not right that the Netherlands are playing England and they can't play their best team. If England doesn't want to play their best team against the Netherlands, okay. At least they have the choice, though. The Netherlands don't because their players weren't released, and it would have been too much trouble to negotiate with the counties on a release. More trouble than it was worth for games that ultimately don't matter to them. And yeah, just in general, that's what ODI cricket has sort of become right now with the Super League, especially on the lower end of the table, where Netherlands and I would honestly put Zimbabwe in this group as well. They're definitely going to finish outside the top eight. They have no chance of automatically qualifying for the World Cup. So what's going on with them now? There's no punishment for finishing 13th anymore. There's no punishment for finishing 12th. Whatever position they get, as long as they're out of the top eight, it's the same. So why should they really care about what they're doing? And yeah, it defeats the purpose of what the Super League was supposed to be, which was give more context to these ODI series. And you know, first years like Afghanistan, Zimbabwe, it still matters because Afghanistan might not make top eight, and they need to win that series to make top eight. But for England, Netherlands, England are gonna make top eight no matter what. Netherlands aren't gonna make top eight no matter what. So what's the point of all this? I guess.
I think there are 2 points in what you say. Obviously, regarding the you know World Cup Super League, the point is that the system, even though it is abolished now, probably for the next cycle, it was still pretty faulty. Obviously, there's not much incentive to rank at a certain rank after eighth because it's all the same, as you said. And from a Netherlands point of view, I think it is a situation where all you can do is maybe see some positives in the sea of negatives because there's a lot of negatives for them rather than positives. But if we had to, be kind of nitpicky and see some of the positives, I think it is pretty great that their game, came up with such big teams, and obviously there were much more number of eyes than there have been on them, for the longest of times. So that is a little positive. Obviously, the games were played in their own country, and there was big crowd. So there has been some if I mean there's been very little, if you want to say it correctly, but there has been some advantages to hosting West Indies and England after all. But as you said, ultimately there's not much incentive to finish at a certain place. There's no point of finishing, there's no point of finishing 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, or 13th, as they all end up with the same fate. So obviously no one wants to push. And as far as them not getting county players, their players from county goes, I think it is the whole circle of evil, because that is how the lower ranked teams have been doing. They have been taking players. I mean, their players have been coming from the other countries like New Zealand, England, South Africa, and ultimately that happens to their players because they can't, put decent money on the table in the first place to lure them in. Then there's obviously the county contracts. So basically, it has become a whole cycle where the lower ranked teams are suffering. I guess unless there is someone, obviously we see that Super League is being abolished in the future. So obviously, it is only getting worse from here. I guess no one is actually trying anything, trying to do anything regarding improving the cricket financially, or even on grassroots levels in these countries. So I guess there's nothing being done. I mean, what else is there to say about that?
Yeah, like there are stuff that could be done, but it would take a lot of effort, and there's just no doesn't seem to be any will at any point in at any level of cricket's governance to do something about it.
True. I mean, as you've seen, ICC is kind of, a very lethargic governing body as we know it. They
Yeah.
do not do stuff they should be doing, and do stuff they should not be doing more often than not. And especially with the associates and obviously the lower ranked teams, it seems like no one wants to take that big leap, I guess. I mean, in case of US, it is always going to be that I mean, they have already found a lot of sponsors, so maybe they can go the franchisee cricket route with the minor leagues and major leagues. But for teams like Netherlands or even Ireland, it is going to be tough to maintain the structure, especially with them probably not getting games with the top 3 or top 8 teams. It is going to be tough for them, and ultimately it is ICC who can do something about it, or